I would like to introduce our next speaker, Professor Yossi Patrich. He's a professor emeritus of the Institute of Archaeology at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He directed large-scale excavation in Caesarea Maritima between 1993 and 2002. His research interests include Greco-Roman and Byzantine archaeology, the archaeology of the Near East in the Hellenistic, Roman, and Byzantine period, and Nabatean archaeology. Today he'll be talking about on the location and orientation of the Second Temple, the archaeological, literary, and astronomical evidence. Thanks. You have a presentation? No.
תודה, היה מעניין. שלום לכולם. Move to English. Good evening and thanks to the organizers. The actual location and orientation of the temple on the Temple Mount is a long debated issue since the 19th century and even before. Some scholars had suggested that the Holy Muslim Rock marks the location of the foundation stone, Even Ashtiyah, in the Holy of Holies. Others had located there the altar. Yet there were others being aware to the fact that the present elevation of the Muslim Holy Rock had nothing to do with the Jewish temple, had located it to the north or to the south of the Muslim Rock. As for the orientation, most scholars had located the temple perpendicular to the eastern wall of the Herodian pressing, ignoring the fact that the temple much preceded the wall. Surely, the location and orientation were primarily dictated by topographical constraints. Three independent sources of evidence, archaeological, literary, and astronomical, to be presented in detail in the lecture, seem to solve once and for all these two enigmas. So here we see, you can see the order of the lecture, the archaeological evidence, the literary evidence, and the astronomical evidence. As a matter of fact, it's already 15 years ago since I have suggested the location and orientation of the temple. Then came other sources, the literary sources, and only very recently, actually last year, the last evidence, the astronomical evidence, was presented to the public in the Bar Kochba, Bezalel Bar Kochba Festschrift. So the archaeological evidence has to do with the map of the water cistern on the Haram el-Sharif that were surveyed already in the 19th century by the Palestine Exploration Fund, and then by Sheikh, and then the archive of the PF was re-examined by Gibson and Jacobson. You see here, I am interested mainly in this strange water cistern, what was called by Wilson, water cistern number 5. It's you see, the shape is somewhat peculiar. Its orientation is 9.7 south of due east. The dimensions are enormous, 54 meters long, 15 meters deep. And in that articles from some 15 years ago, I have indicated that this water cistern precisely indicates the location of the altar and hence the location of the temple and its courtyards, or Azara, to be 9.7 degrees south of due east. Let's see the actually components. You see in the upper left, in dash, the location and shape of water cistern number 5, and how the various arms indicate various components of the complex, the gula chamber, as you see, the water gate, the laver, and the altar. The ramp leading up the altar is between the two northeastern arms of the altar, and since the dimensions in Mishnah Bidot, the relative dimensions are given, you can, by locating precisely the altar, locate all the other components. Now about the laver, and with this we move to the literary evidence. And there are two literary evidences actually, two corpora, one from the Mishnah Midot, and there is a second that I'll show you in a minute. What we learn from Mishnah Midot about the laver was located between the porch and the altar towards the south. The laver got water by means of a mechane, a geared water wheel installed by Ben Katin, a priest. Ben Katin also installed 12 taps to the laver. The water cistern that provided water for all the needs of the Azara is the pressing that surround the temple, including the laver, was the Gula cistern. Namely, this was the name, the ancient name of water cistern number 5. And this cistern was located in the Gula chamber, therefore the same name. The water wheel was located over this cistern, as well as we hear from another passage in Mishnah Midot. How does a water wheel, a geared water wheel look like? You see here an example how it is operated by a single person walking in the very large wooden drum and lifting the water to the lever. It was also possible to set a water wheel above the eastern arms of the water cistern number 5, and thus to feed the laver as well as to wash the altar. This is the reason for the peculiar shape of this cistern. The cistern was cut in the interval between the temple and the southern wall of the Azara in the open area. Now the second literary source, the second literary evidence comes from the temple scroll. In the temple scroll that dated to the Hasmonean period, about 150 before Christian era, a detailed description of the contemporary temple is given. In addition to the altar, 3 other structures adjacent to the temple are described. One on the north, the house of the Mesibah, a stairs tower. On the south, the house of the utensils and the house of the laver, as you see here. This is the reconstructions in Yigael Yadin famous book on the temple scroll. Now, the western arm looks like a geological cleft. According to the temple scroll, excuse me, according to the temple scroll, around the lever, and this here bring a citation, around the lever there was a channel that drained its water into a pit which extended downwards into the land. עשית תעלה סביב לכיור אצל ביתו, והתעלה הולכת מבית הכיור למחילה היורדת ובושטת אל תוך הארץ, אשר יהיו המים נשפכים והולכים אליה ועובדים בתוך הארץ. Namely, this is the suggested geological cleft, the western arm of the water system. Moreover, according to the dimensions given in the temple scroll, it turns out that the house of the lever was located exactly above the western arm of water system number 5, and the geological cleft is the pit Mechila, which extended downward into the land, which is mentioned, as I said, in the temple scroll. This is the second literary evidence that water system number 5 exactly preserved the location of the altar, the temple, and other structures surrounding it and their orientation. Sorry. Now the astronomical evidence. And by this I mean the sunrise azimuth in the day the second temple was inaugurated. As was indicated above, water system number 5 indicates that the orientation of the temple facade was 9.7 degrees south of due east, namely its azimuth was 99.7 degrees. Two questions. One, when was the temple inaugurated? Second question, what was the sunrise azimuth above the Mount of Olives on that date relative to a beholding priest standing in the entrance to the temple? These are questions that archaeologists interested in temples are asking themselves. Now, the inauguration feast at our concern is not the present feast of Hanukkah, commemorated the consecration of the altar by the Hasmoneans, but rather that of the second temple described in the book of Ezra. According to the book of Ezra, the works of building came to an end and the temple was inaugurated on Adar 3rd, year 6 of King Darius. The event was celebrated by the sons of Israel, the priests, the Levites, and the rest people of the diaspora in rejoice and in many offerings. Now, there is a somewhat lengthy description of the feast in the book of Ezra. Now, who is Darius and what was the 6th regnal year? The king was Darius I. His reign had started on 521 before Christian era. His 6th regnal year was 515 BCE, and it was not a leap year. There was only 1 month of Adar in that year. According to contemporary Babylonian astronomical calendars, Adar 3rd, year 6 of King Darius, according to the lunar Babylonian calendar, Adar is a lunar calendar, corresponds to March 12, 515 BCE, according to the Julian solar calendar. And we have now an application that can be used by everybody of Babylonian Julian calendars converter. Actually, all the calendars can be applied in this application. So you see that 12 March 515 is the third year of Darius, the 6th year of Darius' reign. Now, the consecration of Zerubbabel temple was a one-time event, in contrast to the construction of the Hasmonean altar celebrated to the present days. It was not a yearly feast. Among other ancient peoples of Egypt and Mesopotamia as well, there was no yearly consecration feast of the temples. Maybe it sounds strange, but these are the facts. Now, a question. Was Adar 3rd BCE chosen at random? Why was this date chosen for the inauguration feast? Since the desert tabernacle was inaugurated on Adar 23rd or on Nisan 1st. There are various, two versions. Solomon temple was inaugurated on Tishrei 7th. Exact year of both is unknown. So where from comes the 3rd of Adar? What was the reason for choosing that particular date for the consecration of the temple? The answer comes from an expected direction, the sunrise. Now, speaking about the sunrise, of course, we are speaking about the sunrise above the Mount of Olives. And here you see a graphical reconstruction of a line of sight from the Mount of Olives, not the top of it, but the relative location of sunrise at this particular date, and how the rays reaches the inner sanctuary. Now, I was assisted by an astronomer named Dr. Jonathan DeVore from Tel Aviv University. He had studied in Harvard. And you see the result using two different astronomical application, one sky field and the other horizons. And you see that on Adar the 3rd, in sky field application, the sunrise was at 6 o'clock, 19 minutes. And at that second, the azimuth was 98.58. It took 9 more minutes until the sun reached an azimuth of 99.7. In the second application, it is almost the same with an interval of 9 seconds. Here you see a didactic drawing how the sun rays enter through the various gates of the temple and fall on the curtain. And here is with interval of 2 minutes, how more and more of the curtain is lighted. So altogether, we have 3 independent evidences, archaeological, literary, and astronomical, that indicate that water system number 5 indeed preserved the exact orientation and location of the second temple. Now, I have half a page to read, can I, as a summary? So how could the builder, a question that can be asked, and I guess you're asking yourself, how could the builder of the second temple in the time of Zerubbabel match in advance between the orientation of the temple and the azimuth of the sunrise? How could they determine in advance to consecrate the temple in the very day the sunrise will match the orientation of the temple? The answer to this question will require a separate lecture. What can be said in the limited time left is that each day, the morning Tamid sacrifice on the altar was dictated by an accurate inspection over the daybreak from dawn to sunrise. Only then at sunrise were the members of the slaughtered lamb brought up the ramp to the altar, being preceded by the reciting of Shema. Moreover, listen to this, in the daily temple cult prior to the Asmoneans, it was a custom to awaken the Lord every morning and sunrise by reciting, "Awake, why sleepest thou, O Lord? Arise, cast us not off forever." This is from Psalms 44:24. Yochanan the Hasmonean high priest forbade this practice. This is from Aser Sheni and Sota. Now, in the private sphere, the reciting of Shema prayer at the morning to the present, the biblical order, had to reach its end before sunrise, and two sectarian Jewish groups, the Essence of Judea and the Therapeutai in Egypt, were facing east each morning the sunrise. This was their ancestral custom. Hence, it was not difficult to predict in advance the day in which the orientation of the temple will match the sunrise azimuth. Thank you very much. Now, in such lectures, generally at the very beginning, I feel obliged to state that my interest in this topic, and I am working on the temple for all the 40 years with more than 30 publications, is not determined by any hope or aspiration to erect a third temple here. Thank you.
Very interesting. We don't